I am the truth. These were not merely words. They were not a metaphor. They were not arrogance. They were a mirror, held up to a world too afraid to look. He who uttered them, Al-Husayn ibn Mansur al-Hallaj, did not die for a crime of the tongue. He was crucified for revealing the divine reflection within the human soul. Today, I do not speak of history. I speak of you, Ophus, of the trembling thread between the seen and unseen, of the dangerous power of speech woven with spirit. For when a man says, I am the truth, and means not his selfhood but the absence of it, what can remain except truth itself? The drop has returned to the ocean, and still it speaks with the voice of the tide. Hallaj was not speaking as a man. He was speaking through the man. The vessel had emptied, and what poured forth was light too pure for the eyes of the fearful. We fear such words because they unmask us. They shatter the illusion of separation. What if the fire in the bush that Moses saw burns also in your chest? What if the veil you imagine between you and the divine is a veil of your own stitching? These are not idle questions. These are revolutions in silence. Each of us walks the edge between clay and spirit. Each breath is a union of dust and breath, and when we speak, truly speak, we do not speak as isolated islands, but as echoes of the origin. So when Hallaj spoke, it was not blasphemy, it was remembering. And the world, addicted to forgetting, made of his remembrance a crime. But that flame is not extinguished. It flickers in your chest now, waiting for your voice to recognize it. Let us begin with a truth that is both terrifying and liberating. Words are not sounds. They are seeds. They carry within them the power of beginnings and endings, of healing and destruction. They are not born of the tongue, but of intention, of consciousness pressed into form. In the ancient texts we are told, be, and it is. With that single utterance, kun, existence unfolded like breath into the cold of nothingness. The first act of creation was not the shaping of matter, but the command spoken into silence. What then are your words? Are they mere expressions of thought, or are they instruments of creation? Every whisper carries the residue of your inner world. A single phrase can wound a heart or awaken one. A single sentence can start a war or silence it. If you have ever spoken kindness and watched someone's face soften, or uttered anger and seen a soul retreat, then you know the power you hold. So consider then what it means for a man, no longer speaking of God, no longer speaking to God, but speaking as one through whom God alone remains. To say, I am the truth. Hallaj was not wearing the robe of divinity as a crown. He was unclothing himself from the illusion of selfhood. He had peeled away the layers of ego, of attachment, of fear, until what remained was not Hallaj, but reality itself, dressed in the dust of a man. When he said those words, he did not say them to provoke. He said them because he could say nothing else. The river, upon reaching the ocean, does not return as water bearing a name. It returns as wave upon wave of the one sea. He was not claiming, he was revealing. He was not elevating himself. He was disappearing, and the only voice that remained was the echo of the eternal. Modern science now traces what the mystics once lived. Neuroplasticity teaches us that thought alters form. Fear spoken becomes illness. Hope spoken becomes remedy. A prayer whispered in grief slows the heartbeat. A song sung in joy raises the body from despair. We now measure with machines what the inner knowers measured with the soul. Words shape the architecture of the self. And so I ask again, what of the one who speaks only God? Who utters no opinion, no desire, no defense, only presence, only light? Is this not the Word made flesh, not in the sense of divinity descending into humanity, but in humanity ascending into its original form, the image of the real? When a mystic speaks, he does not communicate. He reveals. His words are not messages, they are unveilings. And in that unveiling, something in us stirs. Not because we have learned something new, but because we have remembered something ancient. You have felt it, even if you could not name it. A poem that made you weep for no reason. A silence between words that said more than the words themselves. A moment in which someone's gaze made you feel entirely seen. In those moments, the word is no longer a symbol. It becomes a gate. Hallaj opened that gate, not with philosophy, but with surrender, not with logic, but with burning. And when the fire consumed him, they said he was a heretic. But they were only afraid that his truth would spread. Because if even one soul could become so empty that only God could speak through it, then what excuse do the rest of us have for clinging to our masks? Words are seeds. Hallaj planted one with his life, and though they tried to bury it beneath stone and shame, it blooms still. In you, waiting for the breath that will make it blossom. Imagine a candle burning in a storm, not sheltered, not protected, but fully exposed, flickering against winds, against rain, yet refusing to go out. Now imagine that the storm is not outside, but within you. Your thoughts are the wind, your fears are the rain, your longing the thunder. And yet, there in the center of it all, burns a single flame that refuses to die. That flame is your yearning. That flame is your truth. That flame was Hallaj. He was not a man chasing rebellion. He did not seek to overturn thrones or ridicule sacred law. He was not intoxicated with drama or defiance. He sought only to dissolve. He craved nothing but the union so absolute, so pure, that not even the word "I" could survive it. He walked toward the fire, not to be seen, but to be consumed. When he said, "I saw my Lord with the eye of the heart," I asked, "Who are you?" He replied, "You." He did not mean the small self, the one with a name, a history, a face in the mirror. He meant the deep self, the self before the self that sees without eyes, the self that was breathed into you before you were born. He did not become God, he became the place where God is no longer hidden. This is not heresy. It is honesty. It is not madness. It is clarity so bright that those who live in the shadow of fear call it darkness. This is not theology. It is love, ferocious, all-consuming love, that demands the death of illusion. You have glimpsed this, whether you know it or not. When you watched your child take their first breath, did time not collapse? When you laid someone to rest, did your name not fade? In the face of overwhelming beauty or sorrow, you were no longer you. You were presence. You were the moment. You were a doorway without a doorkeeper. This is the realm in which Hallaj lived, not for a moment, but unbroken. Where others prayed for a taste of God, he drank the whole cup. And when the fire entered him, he did not scream for escape. He opened himself wider. Fawn. The annihilation of the ego is not a metaphor. It is the moment when the mirror becomes so clean, so pure, that it forgets it is glass. It becomes the reflection only. When Hallaj spoke, it was not speech. It was reflection. When he walked, it was not steps. It was echo. When he was silent, The silence itself said, "He is gone, but I remain." And so he became a danger, not because he wanted power, but because he exposed the great lie that we are separate, that we are other, that we are cut off from the source. No kingdom built on fear can tolerate such a man. No system rooted in distance can survive such closeness. So they killed him, thinking they could kill the flame. But you cannot crucify fire. You cannot silence a soul that has no name left. You cannot bury truth once it has burned through flesh and become light. The fire they thought they extinguished did not die. It entered the hearts of those who heard him. It entered you. Now, when your soul trembles at the edge of surrender, know this: you are not alone. That same flame waits inside you, not to consume who you are, but to reveal what you have always been. Let it burn. Why was his truth forbidden? Why did it shake the courts of rulers and rattle the gates of sanctuaries? Why did scribes sharpen their ink like knives and judges wrap their fear in robes of law? Because his truth was not wrapped in politeness. It did not bow to titles or tremble before thrones. It walked barefoot into temples and whispered things too bright for eyes kept closed. His truth dared to say, "You are not separate. You are not distant. You are not broken." And in a world that thrives on brokenness, this was the most dangerous claim of all. What do you do with a man who refuses to kneel before your system because he sees that the system itself is an illusion? What do you do with someone who looks at you, not your mask, not your status, not your sin, and says, "You are already him"? If only you remembered. That kind of truth does not ask for permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It lands in the heart like fire and either ignites awakening or burns everything false to ash. He did not ask for followers. He offered a mirror. But the world does not like mirrors that show too much. So they declared him a heretic. They made a spectacle of his pain. They outlawed his words, burned his books, scattered his memory into shadows. But here is the mystery: the truth cannot be exiled. You can throw it into the fire, and it will rise in smoke. You can crush it under weight, and it will echo through stone. You can silence it with threats, and it will whisper from the lips of poets, hum from the chests of lovers, rise uninvited in the stillness of those who try not to believe. What frightened them was not Hallaj's claim, but its implications. Because if what he said was true, if there truly is no veil but the one we tie around our own eyes, then the towers built on fear would tremble, the machinery of guilt would rust, the temples built on distance would fall quiet. If God is not elsewhere, if heaven is not postponed, then what need is there for the chains of control? We see the same pattern today. The faces are new, the names have changed, but the fear remains the same. Today we call it cancel culture, censorship, misinformation. But the heart of the matter is unchanged. Someone speaks a truth that threatens the fragile scaffolding of the world's illusions, and the world rushes to erase them. A whistleblower speaks and is punished. An artist paints what we are too afraid to see and is ridiculed. A soul awakens and dares to say, "I am not what the world told me I am," and is labeled dangerous. But the question remains, not for history, but for you. What if someone realizes they are more than their roles, more than their paycheck, their passport, their past? What if someone, perhaps even you, begins to remember that the truth has always been closer than breath? What then? Would you burn the book or open it? Would you silence the voice or let it sing in you? This is the moment we all live in, again and again. The trial is not over. The witness stand is in your own heart. The verdict is written each time you choose silence or truth, fear or freedom. And somewhere, in the quiet beyond judgment, that forbidden text is still being written, line by line, by those who dare to live it. You may ask, what does a mystic from the distant past have to do with the quiet weight you carry now? What does a man from another age, crucified in the public square for speaking unbearable truths, have to do with your weary mornings, your unanswered prayers, your quiet victories no one claps for? What does he know of you, of your need to be seen, your fear of being misunderstood, your ache to be whole? Let me ask you instead, have you ever spoken a truth that trembled on your lips, knowing full well it would cost you the comfort of belonging? Have you ever followed your heart into places that left you alone, misunderstood, or even betrayed? But you went anyway, because something in you refused to betray itself. Have you ever stood in the wreckage of a life you once planned, and still had the courage to call it sacred? Then you are already walking in the shadow of the one they tried to silence. Hallaj did not live for approval. He lived for presence. When he said, "Kill me, and in my blood you will find the name of God," he was not offering a metaphor. He was revealing a truth that still unnerves us. When the false self dies, when ego is stripped and name is surrendered, what remains is not absence, it is radiance. The divine does not abandon those who burn. It becomes the flame. We often imagine mystics as men in caves, untouched by the weight of the world. But look more closely, and you will see them everywhere. They walk among us unnoticed. They wear suits to meetings. They prepare lunches for children. They work jobs that demand more than they give back. And still inside them a fire burns. Not a fire of ambition, but a fire of being. They are not trying to impress. They are trying to remember. They are not chasing power. They are being chased by love that refuses to leave them in peace. Have you never met someone whose presence made you feel safe, even if they said little? Someone whose silence felt louder than the world's noise. Someone who looked at you and saw not your sume or your scars, but something behind your eyes that even you had forgotten. That is what happens when a soul becomes transparent. That is what happens when a human becomes a vessel. You may not wear the robes of sainthood. You may not be remembered in books. But each time you choose what is real over what is easy, you resurrect the spirit of Hallaj. Each time you sacrifice convenience for truth, you place your hand on the same flame. Each time you show compassion when anger would be easier, or sit in stillness while the world spins around you. You say without words, I too am more than this name. There is no requirement that you suffer visibly to be holy. You do not need to bleed in public to be pure. The fire you carry may not be seen by others, but you know it's there. You know the cost of staying awake in a world built on sleep. You know what it feels like to carry light that no one asked you to carry. And yet you carry it. This is not about imitation. It is about remembering. You are not called to become Hallaj. You are called to uncover the same secret that once burned through his voice. That secret lives in you. It waits not for perfection, but for permission. And the moment you say yes to what is real, the moment you dare to live in the presence that he died for, the moment you allow yourself to become a vessel for what cannot be named. You will not need a cross to prove it. Your life will be the testimony. Here is where I must return the mirror to you. Not the mirror that flatters your image, but the mirror that undresses your essence. The one that does not reflect your face, but your presence. The one that has waited patiently behind your fears, your roles, your names. What do you see in it now? What do you speak into it? Day after day, thought after thought, when you say, "I'm not good enough," the world around you does not correct you. It complies. When you say, "This world is broken," the world breaks in just the ways you expect. When you whisper, "People cannot change," you do not describe the world, you cast a spell upon it. These are not passive reflections. They are incantations. With every word, you either align with truth or drift further from it. Every sentence you speak is an agreement with reality, or a denial of it. You are not a spectator. You are a scribe. You are not watching the world unfold. You are helping write it. And what you whisper to yourself in quiet hours is more powerful than what you shout into crowds. The voice within you is the first act of creation. Do not use it to cage yourself in illusion. So I do not ask you to scream, "I am the truth," from rooftops, for rooftops echo but cannot listen. I ask you instead to kneel at the altar of your own breath and whisper to your soul what it has longed to hear. I am not separate. I am not less. I am light clothed in clay. Let these words fall gently, like seeds in fertile soil. Let them break the surface of your thoughts, like dawn after a long night. Speak them not to convince the world, but to remind your bones. For your body remembers what your mind has forgotten. Your very cells were formed in the silence between the stars. There is nothing small about you, except the story you've been told. And now let your words rise, gently, truthfully. Speak not to be heard, but to heal. Let your voice become a balm. Let it nourish what has been starved in others. Let it call to the sleeping parts of the world. Even your silence can become a language, if it is filled with presence. A glance, if given fully, can awaken what years of noise could not. A single breath, if taken with awareness, becomes a prayer. And if you speak from this place, not with force, but with truth, your words will echo longer than your voice ever could. Do not fear the quiet path. Truth does not travel in crowds. It walks barefoot beside rivers. It sings under its breath. It writes itself into the fabric of moments, so ordinary they go unnoticed. But you who carry the burden of remembering, you can choose to speak what is real. And in doing so, you invite the world to remember itself too. So speak now, not from your title, your shame, or your fears. Speak from your origin. Speak from the part of you that has never known separation. And if words fail you, let your presence finish the sentence. Let your living become your answer. Let your being be the reality you speak into being. They tried to silence Hallaj with nails and fire, thinking that if they destroyed the body, the voice would vanish with it. But truth does not die the way men do. It does not bleed when pierced. It does not fade when burned. It seeps into the soil like rain, unnoticed but unrelenting, and waits for the right soul to bloom within again. What they tried to end, they only multiplied. For every drop of his blood watered a future heart. And those hearts now beat across centuries, quietly carrying the fire they could not put out. They thought they had buried a man, but they planted a seed, and today that seed stirs in you. In every moment when you choose what is true instead of what is convenient, it awakens. In every breath where you drop the weight of pretending and let the silence speak for you, it grows. In every word you offer not to impress, but to illuminate, the garden he died for begins to rise again. You are not being asked to die as he did. You are being invited to live as he lived, without veil, without separation, without apology for the fire within you. Not everyone will understand it. Not everyone needs to. But the soul recognizes its own reflection, and when you live your truth, you become a mirror for the hidden divine in others. You do not have to preach. Your stillness will speak. Your integrity will sing. Your presence will say what words never could. You may think you are small, that your truth does not matter. But even a whisper, if it carries the pulse of reality, can shatter centuries of silence. Even a single life, lived fully and fearlessly, can undo generations of forgetting. Do not underestimate the quiet power of one awakened heart. It is more dangerous to falsehood than an army. It is more healing to the broken than any sermon, and it is more lasting than any empire built on fear. So speak what is real, not to win, not to convince, but to be. Live what is true, not the version of truth handed to you by fear, but the one that rose before you had a name. Let every breath remind the world that the sacred is not far, not lost, not sealed in ancient texts or distant heavens. It is here. It is now. It is in the way you hold a child. It is in the way you forgive. It is in the way you choose love when anger comes easier. It is in the way you stand up again and again, even when no one applauds. The sacred is never absent. It is only unspoken, but you have a voice. Use it, even in silence. Let your life become the verse that was torn from Hallaj's page. Let your steps be the unfinished poem he never got to write. Let your courage be the echo of his last breath, still vibrating through time, still waiting for a place to land. And if you carry this flame, gently, humbly, unwavering, know that you are not alone. You walk among others who remember. You walk within a lineage that could not be erased. They tried to silence him, but they only passed the song to you. Peace.